Now, I'm not a fan of games that make you sick, especially when it comes to VR motion sickness, but I've been hearing a lot about this Resident Evil 7 game that just came out, and now it's time, check it out. So hopefully I don't get sick too badly.
Good news. I'm gonna be coming home soon. Yay! Oh, I cannot wait to be done with this babysitting job and come home to my loving husband. I miss you.
No one does survival horror better than the Resident Evil franchise. They've been scaring the bejesus out of all of us since 1996, and now this beloved franchise is diving into virtual reality with its latest game in Resident Evil 7 Biohazard for the PlayStation 4. So far, the majority of PSVR games released have been relatively short games and experiences, but Resident Evil 7 is going to be that must-own title that the system has been desperately craving for. Yes, it's titled Resident Evil, but the storyline here really has no direct connection to any of the previous games, so you can say it's a standalone. And that's a good thing because it's an original story. Well, to be fair, it's a mix between Psycho and The Hills Have Eyes. The story here revolves mostly around our protagonist, Ethan, who comes to this town to find his wife Mia. Our character eventually arrives at this creepy looking abandoned house where he eventually reunites with his missing wife, only to realize something's amiss with her and the place. We won't get into the rest of the details with the story, but it's a departure if you're expecting familiar characters in the series. There aren't zombies per se in this one, which to some might be a huge disappointment given the series' history, but we're kept on our toes regardless. We played the game on both the standard PS4 and the PS4 Pro. There are noticeable differences between the two systems, but this is by far the best looking game we've come across for the PlayStation VR so far. You'll want to stick with the PS4 Pro. That's because there's a substantial amount of detail seen everywhere, even on the faces of our characters. It has a slick, realistic look for a VR game. You even get a sense of feeling grotesque thanks to the polished graphics. From the rotting food around the dining room table to the black mold looking stuff, and even the rotting corpses, it looks really good. On the PS4 Pro though. Unfortunately for the standard PS4, the graphics are partly subdued, making it more distracting to the experience than anything else. It seems to struggle with the graphics, resulting in the visuals appearing a bit soft. One of the most integral aspects of the game is its first-person perspective, which adds more of a thrill because we're seeing everything that transpires through our character's eyes. It's frightening to say the least, which makes for several memorable moments. Resident Evil 7 plays similarly to earlier games in the franchise. Just like the first and second games in the series, you'll want to conserve ammo and pick your battles wisely. You might be compelled to use your shotgun because you're spooked momentarily, but that can backfire later on when you really need it. Unlike the action styling of the previous two games, this one has more of that adventure-oriented style. Everything is done using the DualShock 4 controller rather than the Move controllers, so it doesn't feel as immersive as we'd like. Well, at least aiming is a bit easier because it's done using the headset, so headshots are a lot easier to pull off. And like those earlier games in the series, there's a finite amount of items you can carry, as well as a bunch of puzzles to solve to gain access to new areas. For being a virtual reality game though, it's lacking the manipulation and interaction from our part. Nearly through the entire run of the game, we're just sitting down with the headset on and the DualShock 4 controller in our hand. It's lacking the kind of immersiveness we're beginning to see being exploited in other titles. Obviously, it would have been swell if my hands in the game were manipulated by the Move controllers, but that's not the case. Pulling down on the analog trigger to fire a weapon just seems lazy. It would have definitely been better if they used the Move controllers. While there's no shortage of thrills and scares here, we just wish there was more interaction on our part. Thankfully though, I didn't feel sick playing through several hours continuously using the PS4 Pro. And even though I managed to play for a solid hour without feeling extremely sick with the standard PS4, I can tell there was something there that momentarily made my stomach feel a little weird. It's most apparent when you're moving side to side in a horizontal direction. I guess that particular movement feels a bit unnatural, especially when I'm just sitting down in the real world. But I also suspect that the weaker graphical performance is a contributing factor to that feeling as well. First and foremost, I'm glad that Resident Evil 7 is a full-fledged virtual reality game. Most of the stuff we've seen have been short games and experiences, so the $60 price tag of Resident Evil 7 seems valid because of its polished graphics, for a VR game of course, and the fact that this is a full-fledged game and not some sort of mini experience. From a storytelling aspect, Resident Evil 7 does nicely in telling it from a first-person perspective. Now, while I would have preferred more of an action styling, others will like that it pays homage to the earlier ones instead. Now, the only thing missing here that prevents it from being a perfect VR game is the apparent limited interaction on my part. There were countless times I was startled, but it's a game that'll have you sitting and mainly looking around still. If it were to add support for the motion controllers, it could have been a substantially more compelling VR experience.
You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
You don't want to play this game by yourself at home and in the dark because seriously, you're gonna get scared. So if you guys want to learn more about Resident Evil 7, you could check out our website, VRSource, your source for all kinds of reality.